Hello, my brothers and sisters in Christ. Today I'll be talking on the very highly anticipated subject of how do I find a godly spouse? Now, this is a question I get asked all the time, predominantly by men. How do I find a godly woman? Now, before I get into that, I want to run through a few prerequisites, isn't the right word, but a few things to consider before you should even be asking that question, okay? So, dating for Christians is very different to dating in the modern world. Christians, we date or court for the sake of marriage. We don't string out long-winded like 5-year relationships just for the sake of company. We are looking to enter into a sacramental bond with someone we'll intertwine our souls with for the rest of our lives and God. Now, you can probably tell by the language I just used there, that's not to be taken lightly, okay? This isn't something you should just jump into because you've gotten really excited. Maybe you're a recent convert and you're looking for your godly queen to, to manage your kingdom, which is fair enough. I don't blame you. But understanding and honestly accepting your own intentions with this is of utmost importance, because far too often I get people messaging me saying, listen, coach, I'm feeling lonely, or I want to satiate certain desires, so I want to get married. And immediately I think, no, 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 no. Don't do that. Your wife, your husband are not there to fill a void, okay? That's on you to fill. Of course, they'll help you through certain things, but if your main intention of seeking courtship is to fill a void or to help you escape from something that you feel like you're missing, it's only going to lead to pain on both ends. Harm will be done both spiritually and emotionally, not irreversibly, but it's just for the betterment of everyone involved that you make sure you're in a suitable position to take on such a heavy burden, okay? And this is something I've had to come to terms with myself, right? I'm not casting judgment or condemning people. Far too often I've been in a state of despondency thinking, God, where's my wife? I'm so lonely. Only to then be illuminated to many reasons why I was not ready for that in the first place. So that's something for you to think about. I'm not gonna sit here and say you're this, you're that. These are the bullet points to check off if you if you feel like you're ready for a wife. It's just something you need to feel for yourself in absolute wholehearted honesty. That's the difficult part, is really being honest with yourself and saying, do I actually want to enter into that sacrament, or am I just looking for some company? Am I just missing a bit of intimacy that I'm trying to get from someone else? You know what I'm trying to say here. It is really important that you go through those motions and be honest with yourself. The second part I would highly recommend anyone looking to do this to think about would be, do you know what marriage consists of? Are you sure that you've come to terms with what it will actually ask of you in that relationship? Because it isn't just living together, having a family. It is you're entering into an agreement, a covenant with God. Okay, that is extremely important. God doesn't just throw out these covenant agreements like they're sweets. Okay, this is extremely important. It is a sacrament to be married, and if you're not in a suitable position where you could fully embody that sacrament and perform your duties in that relationship, then once again, you're moving towards potentially causing spiritual harm, not just for yourself, but for the person involved as well. And I only bring this to light because I've seen it far too often when people enter into relationships too quickly. Christians and non-Christians. There's a lot of damaged people in this world that are just looking for someone to help them through the darkness. And when you've got two people trying to do that same thing, you've got the blind leading the blind. You've got two traumatized people or people that are just encumbered by their own spiritual warfare, trying to develop an intimate connection with each other. And it's just friction. It's just resistance. You may be getting the dopamine in the honeymoon period and, whatever else comes along in a relationship. But at the deeper emotional and spiritual layers, you're probably not as fulfilled as you think you are. So these are just warnings. And I'm not by any means saying you have to be a complete, perfect, theosis level person to enter into a relationship, okay? But there are some standards that I'd say man and woman have to meet before they're brought together and before they enter into that relationship, which leads me into how to then actually find that person when you feel like you're ready. Well, from what I understand, you don't. You don't. End of video. Thanks for watching. Your wife, your husband, if God wills that to be the vocation for you, is out there somewhere right now, going about their day, living their life. And for whatever reason, God has deemed it inappropriate for you to enter into that relationship yet. You may know them. You may have already met them. But something hasn't brought you together. Okay? Now that's kind of ties into what I was earlier saying about why do you think that could be the case? Why do you think God hasn't introduced you to your wife or husband yet? What do you think he's waiting for you to do? Maybe it's the other person that needs to build up and go through some struggle and build up some strength before entering into that relationship with you. That doesn't acquit you of any responsibility. You should still always be trying to grow. But these are things to really think about, because there's a huge difference between operating out of force and love. If you are constantly trying to force something to happen, right? You're asking every suitable girl out on a date, then you're going for quantity over quality. But then the inverse is also true, is that if you're being completely passive and you're not approaching anyone, then you're not going to get anywhere. And this applies to both men and women, by the way. I tend to think that the man should make the move and approach a woman and court her, but I see no problem with a woman doing the same thing, I'll be honest. But once again, these are all points that you can reflect on. If you are someone that, you've seen someone that you like, but you haven't got that drive to actually approach them and ask them out, ask yourself why. Is it a fear of rejection? Okay, well, that's something that needs to be overcome first. Because if you're operating in a relationship with this fear of rejection, you're going to be doing things that you don't want to do to make sure that she doesn't leave. Okay? You're not going to be able to set boundaries. You're not going to be able to enforce them, even if you do manage to set a couple. So this is why I say that this isn't something to sort of force yourself to keep actively pursuing. It's something that just feels right at the time. And this goes for anything, by the way. This goes for like your career, hobbies, what movie to watch in the evening. Okay? Obviously a very trivial example, but these are things that God will show us when the time is appropriate. You'll get that gut feeling, that instinctive, I really am attracted to that person. I want to go up and ask them out. Okay? And if that hasn't happened yet, just be patient. Just be patient. It'll come. If that's what God wills for you. But that's a whole other question. Like whether the monastic life is for you, hey man, go to a monastery and find out for yourself. But in the meantime, staying on subject. I want to stress the importance of this because long dramatic pause. I am a single man myself, and I have been for a while. So you may first think, okay, well, what authority do you have making this video? You ain't got your wife. Okay, you got me. Fine. But this is something that I've come to learn through my struggle being a single man of nearly 5 years now. I've been there, trust me. All the different things that you think about, I'm really lonely, I just need someone, God was my life. I've been there. And that's why I speak on this, and that's why I truly trust God's timing now. Because I've gone through the different stages of, I don't say grief, but the stages of yearning for intimacy, okay? And each and every time I overcome something great, I say, you know what, God, thank you for not introducing me to my wife yet. Because had I still had this within me at the time, I would have been worried that something would have gone wrong. So these are all things to think about. But let's say you're fully honest with yourself. You know exactly what your intentions are. You see that they're in a wholesome place. You truly are ready to enter that sacrament with God and someone else for the rest of your lives. Where do you go from there? Church, easiest answer, but one that's not going to be satisfactory for many, especially in Orthodoxy. The male to female ratio is quite lopsided, to say the least. It's quite difficult. So the other option is to try and attend social groups. They don't have to be strictly for your denomination. I'm talking as an Orthodox Christian right now, and I would absolutely love my wife to be Orthodox, or at least open to the idea of converting. But it's really important not to get so sucked into that bubble and tunnel vision on having a checklist of what you want your future partner to be, like Orthodox, traditional, loves putting herbs in jars and being really traditional in the household. That was a really strange example, but you get the point I'm trying to make right now. Because if you are constructing an idea for your future partner, that's all coming from your ego, right? Whether that's how they look, how they behave, how they act, how they talk, how they walk, how they squawk. That's all coming from your ego and your sort of biased, selfish perception of the world and what you want. Not what God wills, but what you want. And that's another reason to get out of your head and just feel where the vibes are without trying to sound too new agey. Feel where the vibes are. Are you talking to a woman that you may not have felt conventionally attracted to before, but there's just something about her that really keeps you captivated and you can't avoid her company and things keep bringing you together? That's something to think about. All right? If you are pursuing this with all these worldly objectives in mind and worldly attributes you want to assign to someone, it's only going to make your journey so much more difficult. Okay? So get yourself out there. Put yourself into situations where these types of people will be at. Like I said, church, social groups related to church. Me being in the UK, Orthodoxy isn't exactly rampant, but there are events to go to if you're willing to travel. And depending on the country you're in, the circumstances may change. But one thing I'll say is to just be open-minded, really be open-minded, especially if you're a convert like myself that has once had worldly relationships and expectations of a person in a worldly relationship, because the dynamic is completely different. And what you should be looking for in a woman post-conversion should be a lot different to what you're looking for pre-conversion. I mean it's not the conversion itself that makes that change, but once you've sort of aligned yourself and oriented towards God, then that's where the more sort of wholesome, long-term godly desires in a person should come from, as opposed to worldly attributes, as I mentioned. So that's ultimately my advice here in terms of how to find a godly spouse, is to just make sure your intentions are pure, make sure your heart's in the right place, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into and that you're ready to take on that burden. And providing that you're not living in a hole or locking yourself in a cage all day, every day, and you're getting out in the world and you're doing things, eventually God's going to introduce you to them and you're just going to know. You're just going to know. I know that sounds incredibly romantic, and I don't necessarily believe in love at first sight, but you're just going to know. After talking for a while, you'll feel something burning in you. You'll feel that passion burning in you. And I know I speak without experience in this regard because, lo and behold, like I said, I have not found my godly wife, but I've experienced this with other things in life. And I don't understand why it wouldn't be any different for one's wife or husband. So remember that you're always operating on God's time. It's not your time. They're out there. Your partners, they're shopping right there at Tesco, getting bread right now. Okay? But one or both of you are just not ready. Always assume that it's you that's not ready. Do the work you need to do, or the work you think you need to do, to become the man or woman that can uphold their part of the relationship, grow in that covenant, grow in that intimacy, and ultimately live a happy married life forever and ever. Amen.